Greetings, everybody. This is Earth Faith, and we're talking about on this video the 35 different Senate races that are up for grabs. Most people focus on the what they call the toss-up states. Not everybody agrees on what the 5 toss-up states are. In this video, I'm going to go through all 35 Senate races. I'm going to talk about the toss-up states, and I'm going to talk about the key issues in this inflection point. We're basically at an inflection point in the polls. That means they could tip either way. I'm going to talk about the issues of the Paul Pelosi attack. I'm going to talk about how race can impact the vote, whether in Georgia, in North Carolina, in talk about Nevada, or even Arizona. Arizona seems to be ground zero in terms of how things can be impacted by different issues. The other issue is the women's issue. There are several different leading ladies vying for power, whether Carrie Lake in Arizona. Of course, we still have Hillary Clinton, we have Liz Cheney, we have Tulsi Gabbard, and of course Kamala Harris, the vice president. These leading ladies are pulling for power in different directions that could affect the women's vote in different ways. I'm going to talk about that also. And of course the military. We are basically in an unspoken wartime situation, a military event of one kind or another, something that boosts up the military vote. How would that and where would that impact? Of course, that would tend to, we assume that would help the Republicans traditionally, but not always. So that's the other issue I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go through every single race. Now, let's start with, let's see, the toss-ups that I have on my map are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. 2 others, New Hampshire and North Carolina. Of course, Pennsylvania is where Oz versus Fetterman. This is definitely one of the places where the Paul Pelosi attack has helped John Fetterman. He was the stroke victim. So right now we're seeing in today's polls, and that's why I say this is an inflection point or a tipping point. It can go either way. The Republicans have to be very careful. We saw about 5-point advantage for John Fetterman today versus yesterday, and this is Fetterman gaining the benefit of possibly the sympathy from the attack on Paul Pelosi in San Francisco, where he was hit in the head with a hammer a couple of times, by somebody who didn't even have any good sense, a crazy man. So I don't think that could help Paul Pelosi in any way, but it helps them possibly win in Pennsylvania. I don't know. It's still a little early. The other place where it definitely could help them is, of course, Arizona, where the ghost of Gabby Giffords lives on, and Mark Kelly lives on. Basically, both Pennsylvania and Arizona. Gabby Giffords was shot, House member, shot in the heat of an election. I believe it was the 2008 election where Gabby Giffords was shot. But Mark Kelly is her husband. He's the sitting senator in Arizona, and definitely this thing can pull him away for a few points lead. Now, the Republicans have 2 ways they can go about it. They can give up on Pennsylvania and Arizona. I doubt they're going to do that. This is all the result of the Nancy Pelosi attack. They have to find a way around it. Now, the sympathy, is today is November 1st. I don't know if the sympathy is gonna last until November 8th when the election goes. Of course, people are voting as we speak in mail-in ballots and so forth. But also, there's, only so much you can do, which is that, even Kevin McCarthy, my representative here in Bakersfield, California, expressed his sympathy to Nancy and Paul Pelosi. But, Kevin McCarthy is, of course, the challenger for the leadership, Speaker of the House. So, that is not going to really win you a lot of votes. It's kind of something you have to do. You have to get those condolences out of the way, like Kevin McCarthy did, and hope that in a couple of days that some other issue is going to, be driving the elections in those two states. We're talking about Pennsylvania and Arizona, where the Paul Pelosi attack can really hurt Republicans. Now, of course, the whole thing in Pennsylvania is that John Fetterman is, debilitated, according to the debate performance. The attack on Paul Pelosi took a lot of attention away from that debate performance, where basically, he didn't look, like, 100% qualified to be the senator. It's not just a sympathy play, we feel sorry for you, so we're going to vote for you, but this sense of justice of the victim, which is underlying this country. Now, the fact that we are at war doesn't help Dr. Oz either, because he is, an immigrant, and patriotism really basically doesn't necessarily help there. But however, the weakness for John Fetterman is, he got into some, fell in the racism trap, also, kind of noblesse oblige, I'll take care of the minorities kind of thing. Fetterman definitely has a history of being accused of being basically a racist of some kind, whether against African Americans who accused him, or, against Dr. Oz. Now, the play between, patriotism and racism, that is gonna weigh in the balance. But it won't help you in Arizona, where basically you're at a border, and the border with Mexico, and the Republican strategy was gonna be to play the race card against Mexicans. Unfortunately, the National Republican Party has an overall strategy of courting Hispanics. The one they may not want to court is Kevin De Leon in Los Angeles. He's been accused of racism against blacks, but he is a Democrat, long-standing Democrat. And then there's Nevada, where Kathy Cortez Masto is coming up against Adam Laxalt, and she is a Hispanic female. Now, what we're finding is that the abortion issue is going to be the key to courting the Hispanics. So what we're seeing in Arizona is basically you want to back off on the anti-Hispanic rhetoric, and you want to play the abortion card. That might gain you some votes in Nevada. The Senate race is going to be difficult in Arizona, but, might help you in Pennsylvania. So this is, triangle here. Now, there's another key race that got into play just in the last day or so, and that is North Carolina, where in the last couple of polls we see the Democrat Beasley against Budd, the Republican. And this was, I believe, in a Republican open seat. Vermont was an open Democratic seat, and North Carolina, Budd, was favored, but basically Beasley, the African-American woman, really probably in the mold of Kamala Harris, looks a little older to me than Kamala Harris, maybe Val Demings' age. I'm not sure the age of all these ladies. Usually I don't like to ask ladies, what their age is. Here's an African-American, possibly pulling on the coattails of Kamala Harris. But again, the issue is the women's issue. And we have a number of women. Of course, Hillary Clinton still is around. And her impact, where she's being attacked most, again, we take you to Arizona, Kari Lake, and her governor's race in Arizona. And she has been using some, calling her opponent a coward and so forth. And Kari Lake probably at this point, where we're at a tipping point, needs to back off the bullying. She has a good lead, and the issue is her partner, Masters, Blake Masters, coming up against Mark Kelly and the critical Arizona Senate race. And what can Kari Lake, who really has done a great job? The problem is, there are different kinds of Republicans, as we know, and this is what's going to come up now, is going to be the typical Trump versus Pence, and then you have, the DeSantis Republican, which is a different kind of Republican altogether. Pence, when I say Mike Pence, I'm talking about the Christian conservative. Now, Kari Lake is a Trump Republican. She is a bully. She has bullied Katie Hobbs into a corner. She has portrayed Katie Hobbs in very negative ways, hiding in the bathroom kind of thing. And so this is the time. My advice is for Kari Lake, with all kudos for her success, a very attractive candidate, charming, smart, witty, an excellent female candidate, but unfortunately a little bit too much of a bully to bring the coattails to Blake Masters in particular, and other races that can be impacted, Nevada and Pennsylvania, if Kari Lake is too much of a bully. In Nevada, we're talking about the Mexican border issue with Cortez Masto and the Republicans wanting to court, excuse the language, no pun intended, to court Hispanics. We don't want the bullying of Mexicans at the Arizona border to detract from Republican efforts in Nevada. And of course, with the Paul Pelosi attack, we've said our sympathies, but Kari Lake, just has to back off a little bit. That can hurt in Pennsylvania, where John Fetterman is seen in the lead. So the number one advice to Republicans is, curb your dog. Kari Lake, who is, by all accounts, a very attractive candidate. We think if we can get Kari Lake to, play nice for a little bit, then that can help in Arizona with Blake Masters, Nevada with Laxalt, and in Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. Now, the other women, of course, Liz Cheney, she's pretty much turncoated to the Democratic Party. She hates Donald Trump so much. I really had hopes for Liz Cheney as a potential Republican candidate, but she has, turned. So some people have said this whole thing is what they call a realignment. Yes, Liz Cheney, who's the daughter of Defense Secretary, Vice President, Republican Vice President Dick Cheney, she is also rumored to be a lesbian, and because Nancy Pelosi is from San Francisco, she might have some social ties or basic social courtesies with Nancy Pelosi, and that might build up to more as Trump, pushed her away, and she has a vendetta against Donald Trump, which has pushed her away from the Republican Party. And on them, what we got back in exchange was Tulsi Gabbard, a military woman, a representative from Hawaii, coming up with Barack Obama and saying she cannot take the anti-white racism, and she joins she's vying to join the Republican Party. She came out in favor of Kari Lake in Arizona, and also basically is, probably trying to join the Trump Republicans. She is, she has an Indian husband. She is Hindu by faith, even though she is a Polynesian by descent, and came up with Obama as a Democrat, and now looking for a place like a Trump Republican in 2024 potentially. She came out in favor of Carrie Lake. This was not a surprise, and that is what we got back from the Democrats for the loss of Liz Cheney. And don't forget Kamala Harris. She's a little subdued in the news because Biden gets all the news, but I'm sure she's doing a lot in her districts, and certainly North Carolina is where she's going to come in close. I think it's going to be no cigar for her in North Carolina, but putting up a good show in North Carolina with Beasley, the African-American female candidate. Now, the military vote, of course, Baldock in New Hampshire. Baldock has come up. I believe he's up in the polls by 1 point, so New Hampshire is in play. And I think what we're going to see in New Hampshire is, a real possibility. If the little patriotism goes up, it could definitely put Baldock over the top in the New Hampshire race. Now I'm going to go through, as I promised, all the other states. New York, Chuck Schumer versus Pinion. Of course, that is a safe seat for Chuck Schumer. He's ahead in the polls, 51-40. Maggie Hassan is the opponent of Don Baldock in New Hampshire, and it's 1 point there. Arizona, Mark Kelly, Blake Masters, that's a toss-up. Bud versus Beasley, North Carolina, that is a toss-up. Colorado, Bennett versus O'Day. The Democrat Bennett is going to win that one. Missouri, the Republican Schmidt versus Valentine. That is going to go with the Republicans, Schmidt. Alabama, the Republican Britt versus Boyd. That's going to go with Britt, the Republican. Nevada, as I said, Cortez Masto versus Laxalt. It's going to be a close one. Oklahoma, the Republican Mullen ahead of Horn, and that is Langford also coming in as a Republican. I haven't checked, why they have two names in there for the Republicans. There might have been, I meant to check, why they have two separate polls on that. But the Republicans should win in Oklahoma. Utah, Mike Lee, who was out of favor by some Republicans, but he's going to hold his seat. He's 10 points ahead of his Democratic opponent, Nick Mullen. Iowa, Chuck Grassley versus Franken. That's 11 points in favor of Chuck Grassley. Georgia, Walker versus Warnock. Basically all the eyes are on Herschel Walker. He won the PR battle, the battle for camera lens time. He won the camera time. Nobody wants to know, what does, Raphael Warnock have to say? Everybody wants to know, hey, what's the latest thing that that Herschel Walker has said in the news today? Of course, he came out, with the badge. When he got all the abortion attack, he came out with the badge. He said, look, I'm like a cop, so I have credentials in the Republican Party. Look, there are different kinds of Republicans. They may sometimes all look the same or vote the same, but these are law and order Republicans as opposed to Christian conservatives, like I mentioned, Mike Pence, or big money Republicans. Big money can go on either side, Democrats or Republicans, as we saw with Donald Trump switching parties from Democrat to Republican as a big money Republican. But he helped the Christian conservatives with 3 big Supreme Court votes. So they weren't complaining about that. The problem is today, even with some of his good candidates, Herschel Walker was a Trump candidate, Carrie Lake in Arizona, a Trump candidate. These were good candidates. However, these are the problem Trump is going to have in 2024 with all the legal problems. And Ohio, Vance versus Ryan. It looks like the Republican Vance. Pennsylvania, we talked about Fetterman versus Oz. Murray versus Smiley in Washington. That could come into play. In some reports, it is in play. Patty Murray is probably going to win that one, but that is, another two women running against each other, and usually the incumbent can pull it out. The red wave has had some pushback. This is all because of the Paul Pelosi attack and the political system absorbing the impact of the Paul Pelosi attack. And definitely this has helped Patty Murray the most. She, came back out ahead. She was facing a tough challenge, and a couple of days later, after the Paul Pelosi attack, we see Patty Murray back on top. Illinois, Tammy Duckworth, she'll win over Salvi by a large margin. Maryland, the Democrat Van Hollen versus Chris Chaffee. They're both Chris's, I think. And Van Hollen, the Democrat, Chris will win. Here in California, Alex Padilla, our Democratic senator, is expected to win over the Republican challenger, Mark Mercer. Oregon, the Democrat, Ron Wyden, is expected to win over Ray Perkins, Joe Ray Perkins, female candidate. In Hawaii, Brian Schatz versus Bob McDermott. The Democrat Schatz is supposed to be winning. Vermont, again, a safe Democratic seat. Peter Welch versus Gerald Malloy. And Peter Welch, the Vermont Democrat, is again. That is, as I said, where Patrick Leahy, a longtime Vermont Democratic senator, had announced that he would not run for re-election. In Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, the Democrat, is expected to win over Leora Levy, the Democrat. The Republican, the Democrat is supposed to win. Richard Blumenthal, a very familiar name. So overall, what we're talking about is how the impact of the Paul Pelosi attack has caused the numbers to push back against Republicans in some of these key swing states. The sympathy vote, certainly Mark Kelly in Arizona is where the fracture, the fault line is, because his wife, Gabby Giffords, was attacked a few years ago in a heated election. And this can impact all of these. Probably it's quite possible that the Arizona Senate candidate, Republican candidate Blake Masters, will not be able to beat Mark Kelly because of this Paul Pelosi attack. It's possible the numbers, just because of the timing, seems to have helped Patty Murray. It seems to have helped the stroke victim John Fetterman, but I think that one can be recovered, and Nevada can be recovered because of if basically, and we're seeing a little defensiveness by Carrie Lake in Arizona. She had an emergency press conference today to address some of the attacks against her. And so again, my suggestion is to push forward on the abortion issue, back off on the border issue, continue to attract Hispanic voters, and then you might win in Nevada, and the sympathy play might come to an end by November 8th in Pennsylvania. North Carolina is a tight race, but it should wind up Republican. Earth Faith here, signing off.